Okay, let's unpack this. So if you've spent basically any time online lately, particularly in, the tech and business spaces on social media,
Oh, yeah. You can't miss it.
you've been absolutely hammered by this one narrative. It's everywhere. The idea that AI is fundamentally overhyped.
hmm And the big number they throw around is 95%.
Exactly. The claim, and they often cite this MIT report, right, is that 95% of enterprise AI projects are just massive failures, like staggering failures.
And the conclusion they draw is, therefore, this whole generative AI wave, it's just a fad. Or, if you're really cynical,
Yeah.
some kind of scam.
Correct, dismissive.
And that number, that specific 95%, it's sort of metastasized, hasn't it? It's become this viral soundbite.
Totally.
Used by, well, let's call them the AI skepticism influencers.
Yeah.
And the goal seems to be to just halt momentum, to convince you, the listener, that, hey, if these huge corporations with basically unlimited budgets can't figure AI out,
Then how could anyone else? Yeah.
exactly, it's just breeze paralysis. It makes people afraid to even try.
But that's precisely why we're doing this today. Our mission here is critical. We are going deep, a real deep dive into the actual source material, specifically that MIT report everyone quotes, but frankly, seems to misinterpret almost universally.
We really dug into it.
Yeah, we did, to show what the data actually confirms. Because the real story here, and this is what's so important, it isn't that AI technology is failing.
No, not at all.
The real story is, honestly, far more empowering for people trying to build things. It's that the old way of doing things, the broken, inefficient way enterprises have built software for, 30 years?
At least, yeah.
That way is structurally incapable of implementing modern AI. That's the failure point.
And that's where it gets really fascinating, right? The paradox is huge. You've got enterprises, across every single industry with this massive, genuine, business-critical demand for AI solutions.
They know they need it.
They absolutely do. They understand the economics, the need for efficiency, for automation.
Yeah.
But they just struggle so profoundly to actually execute.
So why? If the demand is there, why the 95% failure rate?
Well, that's the kicker. It's usually not a technical ceiling. It's more like an organizational and cultural floor. The very teams who are supposed to implement this stuff.
The internal teams, legacy IT, engineering.
Exactly. Often, they actively don't believe in AI. Or, maybe more subtly, they refuse to integrate even basic productivity-boosting tools. Like, think about code generation.
They won't use Copilot or a similar tool?
Often, no. There's resistance.
Yeah.
And that internal resistance, well, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? It basically guarantees failure.
Which brings us to the pivot point, the core message for you listening. We're going to lay out why this massive failure rate isn't some scary warning sign for you if you're an ambitious learner or a builder.
Quite the opposite.
It's actually the greatest news you could possibly hear. It signals this wide open, colossal opportunity for those few, nimble external teams.
The startups, the innovators.
Who have the right mix of skills, the technical chops, the business sense, to build systems that actually work where the big guys are failing.
So this deep dive, it really goes way beyond just the tech itself. It's about, organizational politics.
Oh, definitely.
The serious impact of just bad product taste. Poor vendor choices driven by misplaced trust, not confidence.
Yeah.
And maybe most critically, this huge unaddressed skills gap that's basically defining the entire frontier of enterprise tech adoption right now.
Okay, so let's tackle that myth head on. The noise, right? The stuff from the AI doomer influencers. That really reductive, tweet-sized summary of the MIT study.
Yeah, the version that fits neatly into 280 characters.
Exactly, because if you only read that surface take, the conclusion seems simple, almost lazy. AI startups are failing, the tech is hype, let's all just go back to building, the old stuff.
And the danger is people take that 95% enterprise failure rate and they just apply it universally. They don't read the details.
They think, well, if 95% of these big projects fail, then all AI work, even from dedicated smart startups, must also be failing.
It's a classic extrapolation fallacy, completely misses the nuance.
But when you actually do the work, like we did, and dig into the full MIT report, what does the data really show?
It actually confirms approaches that are working. Things that we see succeeding out in the real world. Specific types of AI agents, certain implementation strategies, how data integration is handled.
So it's not a blanket condemnation at all.
Not even close. The study implicitly highlights the winning strategies, the things used by a very specific subset of builders. It contrasts sharply with that lazy, everything is failing tweet summary. The success stories are often happening when nimble outsiders come in and implement particular kinds of AI solutions.
Which brings us back to that cultural issue inside the big companies. This is where the mechanics of failure get really, really interesting. Why do these huge organizations struggle so much?
Well, the report hints at it, and honestly, countless founder anecdotes confirm it. It's deeply rooted in cultural resistance.
Inside the engineering team.
Often, yes. The internal engineering departments in these places are frequently filled with really smart, skilled people. But maybe they've been burned by hype cycles before,
Sure, Web3, blockchain.
Exactly. So they come in already believing, fundamentally, that this AI stuff is overhyped.
And it's not just passive skepticism, is it?
No. They actively seek out and celebrate studies that confirm their bias. They're the first ones retweeting that MIT failure stat because it validates the negative story they already tell themselves.
It fits their narrative, lets them stick to the comfortable existing roadmap.
And you see this bias manifest in really practical ways, like in their workflows.
Yeah.
They often just refuse to use new tools that could drastically boost their productivity.
Like the code generation tools we mentioned, GitHub Copilot, things like that.
Yeah. Their refusal might stem from a few places: fear of losing control, maybe skepticism about the quality of the output. Sometimes it's almost philosophical, like, a machine shouldn't touch my code.
Okay, but think about the consequence of that, the downstream effect. If the builders, the actual people writing the code, managing the data pipelines, integrating these complex systems, if they don't believe in the product,
Or they actively refuse the best tools to make it work,
then they're structurally incapable of delivering something that works. It's almost like a built-in failure mode, guaranteed from the inside.
it really is. And that's the great irony here, isn't it? The very people who should be the most powerful users of these new AI capabilities, the skilled, experienced engineers, are often the ones pushing back the hardest.
They see it as a threat to their expertise, maybe, rather than a lever.
Precisely. A massive leverage point they're just ignoring.
And that mental shift required, it seems like the hardest part. If you're a really good engineer, used to 100% manual control, moving to maybe 50% machine assistance feels like a step back. Even to the output is suddenly 10 times faster.
Right. And the data suggests that just overcoming that resistance, just committing to trying these tools seriously, not just, running one bad prompt and giving up.
Yeah, you have to actually learn it.
You do. That effort turns a 1x engineer into a 10x engineer.
Yeah.
And potentially a 10x into a 100x. It's this huge productivity multiplier that the external competition, the startups, they're embracing it completely.
Which just widens the gap even further between internal capability and external potential.
Absolutely. And this cultural reluctance, this sort of confirmation bias, it also dictates how they interpret insights from the outside world. We saw this play out perfectly with Andrej Karpathy's recent interview.
Oh, yeah, the discussion around agents.
Exactly. The quick takes, the tweets summarizing it, immediately jump to, see, agents are overhyped. Even Karpathy says they have limits.
If you stopped reading there, you'd think the whole agent idea was dead on arrival.
Right. But if you actually listen to the full context, the nuance of what he was saying, his point wasn't that agents are failures technologically.
What was the point then?
He is saying you can't just give an agent some vague goal and expect it to magically manage massive complexity 100% reliably on its own. Not yet, anyway. Agents need support. They need infrastructure.
Like what?
Robust tooling, reliable data feeds that give them context, consistent ways to manage their state or memory, and critically, really good evaluation mechanisms to know if they're on track.
Okay, so the need for all that supporting infrastructure.
Precisely. That need for state management, tooling, context evaluation, that's not a sign of failure. It's the opposite, and a massive, fantastic opportunity for builders.
Ah, I see. It's like a Rorschach test.
Totally. If you want to believe AI is hype, you read the tweets and say agents are dead. If you're a builder looking at enterprise failures, you listen to Karpathy and realize, wow, there are dozens of complex, necessary systems I could build to make these agents actually work inside a big company.
So the problem is actually the opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the cultural resistance, the confirmation bias. Let's shift now from that sort of will failure to the capability failure, section 2.
Right, the mechanics of why they often can't, even if they wanted to.
And the core reason driving that 95% failure rate, when you get down to the nuts and bolts, it's rooted in a problem that's been decades in the making.
Yeah, it's a legacy issue.
The majority of software built in the world, especially the stuff built internally or heavily customized within large enterprises, it's often just crippled by technical debt, siloed architectures.
We're not talking about slick consumer apps here, are we?
No. Think about the massive mission-critical beasts, a complex HR platform for a global company, maybe an inventory management system for a logistics giant.
Systems that are often 20, maybe 30 years old,
Yeah.
running on ancient code bases.
Designed long before anyone was thinking about distributed intelligence or real-time data flowing everywhere.
And that's the crux of it. If, say, a big manufacturer needs a modern AI system to predict supply chain disruptions, that AI needs data from the inventory system, the ERP, the CRM, the finance ledger.
All these different silos.
Exactly. But because these systems were built in isolation, often decades apart, by different teams using different tech stacks, they fundamentally don't talk to each other easily. They don't speak the same language.
It's the decades of technical debt failure mode, right?
Perfectly put. Trying to bolt a real-time, high-speed AI layer onto that kind of infrastructure, it's like trying to strap a jet engine onto a Model T Ford.
It just wasn't designed for it.
The data structures are wrong, the APIs might be fragile or non-existent, and often the teams who own those legacy systems guard their data like dragons hoarding gold.
Okay, so when the enterprise finally decides we need AI, how do they typically try to solve this mess?
Well, usually one of two ways, and both are pretty failure-prone based on the data. First, they try to use their internal IT teams.
But those teams are often already underwater, right? Underfunded, focused on just keeping the lights on with the old systems.
Exactly. They're structurally not set up for complex greenfield AI development. They're maintenance crews, not R&D labs for the most part.
Okay, so internal IT often doesn't work. What's the second path?
They go external. But usually not to nibble startups initially. They go to the massive consulting shops. You know the names Deloitte, EY, Accenture, the big players.
Ah, the safe choice. The established vendors.
Right. But going external to them often means you solve one problem, maybe getting organizational buy-in because it's a trusted name, but you introduce a potentially huge capability problem.
How so?
These consultants, they are masters of process, of mediation, of writing reports. But the actual technical output from their teams, especially when dealing with bleeding-edge AI architecture, it's frequently, let's say, substandard.
Which brings us to the politics.
Oh yeah, the political barrier. This is critical. Think about sophisticated AI software. If it's meant to automate something important, like legal document review or financial risk assessment.
It cuts across departments.
Exactly. It has to touch legal, IT, data science, operations, compliance. And the minute you do that, you trigger intense political battles. Turf wars.
People protecting their budgets, their headcount, their data.
They're power-based, essentially. Data is power inside these orgs. So this friction, this fear, it's precisely why the consultants often get hired in the first place.
To be the mediators.
Yes. Their first job, and it's a necessary one sometimes, is diplomacy. They get the legal team, the data science team, the ops team in a room. They write exhaustive documents outlining what everyone claims they want. They play the alignment role, trying to satisfy every stakeholder's demands.
High-stakes negotiation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what's the typical outcome of high-stakes diplomacy when you're designing complex technical architecture?
Usually. Compromise that doesn't really work.
Bingo.
Yeah.
The consultants, great at mediation, often lack that deep polymath technical expertise needed to actually implement the sophisticated AI-native software that needs to be fast, efficient, robust, and compliant. So they end up just combining all the conflicting requirements from every fearful stakeholder.
And the result is?
The classic failure of design by committee. The camel instead of the horse. It ticks all the political boxes because everyone feels heard, but it fails functionally because the architecture is a mess, compromised by conflicting needs and outdated tech assumptions.
And this isn't just our opinion, right? The MIT study actually backs us up with data.
It does, quite clearly. When they surveyed the AI projects, they found a staggering 2/3, 2 out of 3 projects were built either entirely internally by the enterprise IT folks or externally with the help of one of these big consulting agencies.
Okay, so the vast majority followed one of those two paths. What about the rest?
Only the remaining 1/3 involved actually buying a purpose-built product from an outside vendor, like a specialized AI startup.
And here's the kicker, I assume.
This is the crucial finding. The success rate for that small outside vendor group, the 1/3 who bought a tailored solution from specialists, was exponentially higher. Significantly higher than the success rate for the internal or consultant-led groups.
Wow. So the data itself tells the story.
It screams it. The current process for building new, complex tech inside existing corporate structures, it's fundamentally broken and just massively prone to failure.
Okay, so that huge gap in success rates, internal consultant failure versus external vendor success, that leads us right into this green light anecdote. It really highlights the whole dilemma, doesn't it? Trust versus actual competence.
Yeah, it's a perfect illustration. So the story goes, there's this bank, right, trying to get an advanced AI system for some critical financial process. And this startup, Greenlight, they pitch a working product. They have the solution.
Sounds great. So the bank bought it.
Nope. They balked. Why? Because they had this decades-long, deeply embedded relationship with Ernst & Young, a huge consulting firm. E&Y handled most of their software stuff.
The incumbent vendor relationship.
Exactly. The bank essentially said, look, we trust E&Y. They're our guys. They promise they can build this AI thing for us too. So in that situation, existing trust, even if it's misplaced technologically,
Completely overrides proven external competence.
overwhelmingly, it's the safe, known path, even if it's the wrong path for this specific need.
So what happened? Let me guess.
Predictable, right? E&Y spends a whole year, burns through a ton of the bank's money trying to build this AI system from scratch.
Yen.
Total failure. Didn't work. So the bank, after wasting a year, millions of dollars, incurring massive opportunity cost, they eventually had to crawl back to Greenlight
Who then deployed their working system.
successfully and much faster. It's this painful cycle that shows how organizational inertia and those existing vendor relationships create this massive drag, preventing the shift towards genuinely better AI-native solutions.
Okay, so let's frame the situation clearly then. Enterprises often can't build it internally because of culture, tech debt, politics.
Yep.
And the established big late-stage software companies, the Oracles and SAPs of the world, they also struggle.
Often, yes. They might be relying on their own old non-AI native systems, or they suffer from that same internal lack of belief, that same resistance we talked about earlier among their own engineer.
Which leaves
A massive startup-shaped hole sitting right in the middle of almost every core business process that needs an AI upgrade. It's just wide open territory.
But filling that hole isn't easy. It takes a very specific, almost freakishly rare skill set, right? You called the successful startups of the 5% a very rare breed.
Absolutely. They have to be polymaths. It's not enough to be good at one thing.
Okay, so what are the pillars? What defines this polymath skill set? Let's just break it down.
All right, pillar one, extreme, genuinely up-to-date understanding of AI at the bleeding edge.
Which means more than just knowing what an LLM is.
Oh, way more. It means understanding the guts of retrieval augmented generation, RAG, knowing how to do prompt engineering systematically with governance, tracking data lineage for compliance, and crucially, knowing how to actually operationalize these models reliably at enterprise scale, dealing with things like latency and cost.
Okay, deep tech knowledge. Pillar 2.
Profound product taste. This is key. In the AI world, this means taking a technology that can be complex, sometimes unpredictable, like a generative model,
And turning it into something clean, predictable, reliable for a stressed out business user.
Exactly. It means designing interfaces that handle ambiguity gracefully, that have seamless error handling, that feel deeply integrated into the workflow, not just like some chatbot awkwardly bolted onto the side.
Makes sense. Technical depth, product intuition. What's pillar 3? You said this might be the most critical.
Yeah, I think it often is. Pillar 3 is humanity and domain understanding.
Meaning?
You have to truly grok the human processes, the messy reality, the regulatory constraints of the specific business you're selling into. You can't just write elegant code in a vacuum.
You need to understand how a bank actually works. Or a hospital.
Eh.
Or a factory floor.
Precisely. The illogical workflows that grew over time, the compliance checklists that seem nonsensical but are non-negotiable, the specific jargon used by that chemical inventory manager. You need to understand their world deeply.
And this three-legged stool, tech, depth, product taste, domain empathy, that's where the big skill gap exists.
That's the massive gap. It's less about raw coding ability and more about translation skill. You have brilliant engineers who live in the coding cave.
Technically amazing, but maybe can't relate to the end user's day-to-day pain in, say, mortgage servicing.
Right. And conversely, you have the domain experts, the mortgage servicers, the compliance officers, who deeply understand the process and the regulations.
But they can't architect the AI system. They lack the technical fluency.
It's not even always about coding itself. It's about the high-level translation. There are just too few people who can fluidly connect, okay, this specific financial regulation mandates a 99.999% recall rate on detecting fraudulent documents to, therefore, our technical architecture needs a multi-stage RG system fine-tuned on these specific legacy audit logs with these specific evaluation metrics.
Bridging that gap seems incredibly difficult.
It is. And the inability of large enterprises to either find, hire, or cultivate people with that rare combination of translation skills, deep tech understanding, and user-focused product taste. That's arguably the single biggest reason the failure rate stays stuck around 95%.
Okay, let me push back slightly here, though. It sounds like you're saying it boils down to communication and imagination. But if the stakes are that high dealing with, say, JP Morgan's regulatory burden, isn't it a bit naive to think a 50-person startup can actually manage that complexity? Complexity that giants like Deloitte with armies of consultants apparently can't handle.
That's a really fair challenge, and it gets to why the startup must be AI native from day one. Deloitte, or an internal team when they try to build this, they're wrestling with hundreds of tangled legacy systems, the dead weight of past decisions, and the constant pressure of political compromise we talked about.
They're bogged down.
Completely bogged down. The startup, though, they start with a clean slate. And crucially, a highly focused scope. They only need to solve one problem really well, like, say, just the real-time credit decisioning piece, but with perfect, modern AI architecture.
They're not carrying the baggage of the entire bank's history.
Exactly, no baggage. And because they're laser-focused, their architecture can be inherently more streamlined, more efficient, easier to validate, and ultimately more compliant and defensible from a regulatory perspective for that specific task. Their advantage isn't institutional reputation. It's speed, focus, and architectural purity. So to win these polymath startups, they need a strategy that looks very different from your typical SaaS playbook. The winning approach is all about deep integration.
Meaning not just a late API connection, more than just plugging in.
Oh, way more. It means embedding themselves directly into the guts of the enterprise, going deep in the integration, as one founder put it.
So they have to understand, maybe even interact directly with, the core systems of record, the ancient databases, the specific data schemas, the internal workflows.
Yes. They have to really grok it, sometimes even ingest or replicate parts of it. Now, this level of integration, this commitment, it's much harder, much more time-consuming than typical SaaS. It takes longer to sell, longer to implement.
But the payoff is bigger.
That's what the evidence suggests. Once you succeed, once you're plugged into those core systems, the reward, the pot of gold, let's say, is substantial. And importantly, it's defensible, sticky.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Can you give some examples? Startups that use this deep integration approach to crack problems the big guys couldn't.
Absolutely.
Right.
Let's look at Tactile. They build this high-level, real-time business decision engine, primarily for financial services firms. Think about critical regulatory processes like KYC and AML.
Know your customer and anti-money laundering, core banking stuff.
Super core. Highly complex, data-intensive processes designed to stop fraud, terrorism financing, essential for any bank's integrity and license to operate.
And the enterprise failure here?
It's stark. The big banks, Citi, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, they've all tried repeatedly to build these kinds of decision engines internally. In almost every case, it took them like 3 to 5 years, burned through tens of millions of dollars each time. And even then, they often struggle to keep the underlying models current with new threats or regulations, or to get the system fully adopted and working across all the different business units. The sheer complexity of pulling together all the necessary disparate data sources just crushed their legacy IT structures.
So what did Tactile do differently?
They built an AI-native solution from the ground up. A real-time REST API that manages these complex decisions, but critically, allows the bank to easily plug in the latest AI models, update rules dynamically, swap out data sources. It gives them flexibility.
And they delivered this faster and cheaper.
For a fraction of the budget and time. They succeeded where essentially infinite capital and institutional reputation failed because their architecture was designed for AI-driven compliance and real-time updates from day one.
Okay, that's compelling. Another example.
Let's talk about Castle AI. They're focused on building an AI-native mortgage servicer.
Okay, mortgage servicing, dealing with payments, escrow, defaults. Another complex, regulated area.
Very. And Castle often finds itself competing directly against the old guard vendors who've been serving the mortgage industry for decades.
The incumbents.
Right. And these incumbents, they're feeling the heat. They know they need AI, so they're scrambling to offer their own AI solutions.
Which often means
It often means the classic AI slapped on top problem we mentioned. They take their ancient, non-AI native core system, and maybe they bolt on an LLM to do something minor, like summarize a customer service call transcript.
a superficial feature, not a core redesign.
Exactly. It's marketing. It doesn't fundamentally fix the underlying inefficiency or compliance risk in the old system. Castle, because they started AI native, approaches it totally differently, focusing on superior architectural efficiency, better data handling, and crucially, better product taste for the actual users.
And how does that play out in sales?
They often get into these bake-offs, head-to-head comparisons against the incumbent solutions. And Castle consistently wins these bake-offs, even against vendors the banks have trusted for 20 years.
Why?
Because their ground-up AI design just delivers better results, lower risk, higher efficiency, a much better experience for the bank's employees, and that demonstrable superiority allows them to close deals with very large banks and start scaling quickly.
Okay, one more. Let's talk about Reduct. This one seems fascinating because of the speed and the client.
Yeah, Reduct is focused on advanced document processing, specifically for AI workflows. And the striking thing is, they managed to close a deal with a major FAA company.
A tech giant known for having thousands of brilliant engineers in-house.
Exactly. They closed that deal just 154 days after Reduct even launched. The speed is just astounding.
What was the internal failure at the FAA company that Reduct solved?
It was chronic. This FAA company had been trying for years to build robust internal solutions for sophisticated document processing. They weren't starting from zero. They were using this standard enterprise toolkit.
Things like open source OCR libraries, cloud services like AWS Tesseract or Google Vision.
Yeah, exactly. Tools that are powerful for certain things, like reading clean, standardized machine-printed text on an invoice.
But enterprise documents are rarely that clean, are they?
Almost never. You've got complex legal agreements with weird formatting, scanned documents with handwritten notes in the margins, non-standard financial reports from acquisitions, templates that change constantly. It's messy.
So when the FAA company needed, say, 99.9% accuracy on those kinds of messy documents for compliance or analysis,
Their internal solutions, even using good off-the-shelf components, just weren't cutting the mark, as they put it. They couldn't handle the ambiguity, the variability, the sheer complexity reliably enough.
so Reduct came in and won. Why? Purely better tech.
It was fundamentally down to superior architectural design and a much better user experience that's the essence of AI native product excellence. But, and this is crucial, the sources emphasize that just having the best product wasn't enough.
Ah, the politics again.
Right. Getting the deal done still required Reduct to navigate incredibly complex internal politics within the FAA company, figure out the labyrinthine procurement process, and deal with resistance from the internal teams whose projects were effectively being replaced.
So product excellence gets you in the door.
But political savvy gets the contract signed.
Okay, so if the MIT paper itself calls out these internal political turf wars as a major reason for that 95% failure rate, we need to talk about the playbook. How do successful startups navigate that minefield?
Well, often it involves doing things early on that are, frankly, unscalable. Things you can't do once you have 100 enterprise customers, but are essential to land the first few.
Like what? What's the key tactic?
The absolute essential key is finding, cultivating, and ultimately winning over an internal champion inside that big company.
An advocate, someone on the inside who believes in you.
Exactly. Take Reduct again. They didn't just sell software to that FAA company. The founders apparently became really good friends with the champion. They built a genuine human connection.
So it wasn't just demos and slide decks.
No. It was building trust, fostering an environment where that internal person felt secure enough personally and politically and optimistic enough about the solution to basically stick their neck out and take a shot on them, often against the wishes of the established IT department or procurement folks.
Is there a typical profile for this champion? Who are these people?
It's often a specific archetype, usually a senior manager, maybe a director level, someone who, deep down, secretly wishes they'd done a startup themselves.
Ah, the frustrated entrepreneur inside the big company.
Precisely. Or maybe they just have a strong ambition to make a real impact, to fix something broken, but they feel constrained by the bureaucracy. They often end up living vicariously through the startup founder's energy, their ambition, their optimism.
So they want the startup to succeed, partly for their own validation.
Yes. It becomes their internal victory against the status quo, which means as a founder trying to win them over, you need to master this balancing act. Authenticity combined with undeniable competence.
What do you mean by authenticity here?
Don't try to mimic the corporate drones. Don't show up in a stiff suit if that's not you. Don't adopt the confusing, jargon-filled sales pitch you hear from Microsoft or Oracle.
Be yourself, but be credible.
Exactly. Be smart, be driven, demonstrate you understand their problem deeply, but be fundamentally different from the slow-moving incumbent vendors they're used to dealing with. That authenticity helps nurture that connection with the champion who wants something new.
Okay, finding a champion is key. What other tactics work for bypassing the usual hurdles?
Another really powerful one, especially in tech ecosystems, is leveraging acquired founders.
People whose previous startups were bought by the big company you're trying to sell to.
Yes. We heard specific examples, startups finding founders whose companies got acquired by, say, Oracle or Apple, often through connections like Y Combinator.
How do they help?
They're invaluable. They know the internal landscape intimately. They know the politics. They know who the real decision makers are. They know the procurement shortcuts. They can literally give you the step-by-step playbook to get a pilot project approved, bypassing the standard multi-year sales slog.
And they're often still advocates for better tech inside the mothership.
Usually, yeah, they got acquired. But they often still want to see the big company adopt more modern, efficient software, maybe like the kind you're selling. It's this kind of informal pay-it-forward network.
Hard to measure in a study, but clearly a huge accelerator.
Massive. And it points to a broader shift. Enterprises are increasingly recognizing their internal limitations. This makes them more willing now than maybe 5 years ago to take calculated bets on promising startups if they have that internal sponsor, that champion, who can vouch for the solution and help navigate the internal maze.
Okay, so you navigate the politics, you get deeply integrated. What's the ultimate payoff? Where does the moat come in?
The enterprise moat. This is the end game. Once a startup successfully runs that gauntlet, survives the politics, proves its architectural superiority, achieves that true deep integration we talked about, the stickiness they create is profound, potentially permanent.
There was a great quote about this, right? From a CIO.
Yes, absolutely critical quote. Came from the CIO of a multi-billion-dollar financial services firm. He said, quite plainly, "Once we've invested time in training a system, the switching costs will become prohibitive."
Okay, unpack that. Training a system. What does that mean in this AI context?
It means the enterprise has invested significant time, internal resources, and crucially their own proprietary data into configuring and fine-tuning your specific AI model or system to their specific workflows, their specific compliance rules, their specific data formats.
So it's not just installing software anymore. It's co-creating intelligence based on their unique context.
Precisely. So, what does this all mean for that small, successful startup builder? It creates a massive defensible moat. It completely invalidates that common fear you hear, oh, simple ChatGPT wrappers won't have any moats.
Because it's not just a wrapper anymore.
Not if you've done it right. If your system is successfully deployed, deeply embedded in their core systems of record, and the enterprise has poured their unique data and process knowledge into training it, you are no longer just a thin layer. You've become the indispensable, compliant, intelligent engine driving a core part of their operation.
And the switching costs. Why prohibitive?
It's not just the money they spent implementing your system. It's the data lock-in. Your intelligence now resides partly within your system's models. It's the process lock-in. Their teams are trained on your interface. Their workflows depend on it. To rip you out means
retraining everyone, rebuilding the data pipelines, probably facing months of disruption, maybe even regulatory risk during the transition.
Exactly. It becomes incredibly painful and risky to switch. You become deeply structurally embedded.
Wow. So that's the ultimate prize hidden inside that gloomy 95% failure narrative.
That's it. The failures are organizational, cultural, political. They are not inherent to the AI tech itself. And ironically, those very failures create this incredibly strong defensive barrier for the few polymath startups who actually manage to crack the code of enterprise adoption. Hashtag tag outro, Justin.
Okay, let's try and synthesize all of this. The big picture opportunity we've just spent time unpacking. That really high failure rate for enterprise AI, that shocking 95% number.
It's fundamentally not about the AI technology itself being flawed.
Right. It's almost purely a function of internal issues. Incompetence in execution, deep-seated cultural resistance to new tools and methods, the crippling weight of technical debt, and relying on old IT models or consultants who just aren't equipped for this new world.
So the key takeaway for you listening to this should really be one of confidence, not fear. Don't look at that 95% failure stat and think, oh man, I could never be part of the successful 5%.
As you absolutely can be.
If you can cultivate that rare combination, that polymath approach, truly cutting-edge technical excellence combined with superior AI-native product taste and that deep empathy and understanding for the specific human domain you're targeting.
We've seen the proof points, right? Startups winning huge deals, even from FAANG companies, from major banks. Precisely because they prioritized that ground-up AI architecture and genuine product excellence.
Things that the internal teams and the lumbering incumbents, weighed down by their own history and politics, simply cannot replicate effectively.
It feels like we're at this inflection point. Decades of enterprise software might genuinely need to be rewritten, rebuilt from the ground up to actually work properly, seamlessly, reliably with modern AI capabilities.
Which brings us to our final thought, a provocative question for you to mull over. We've talked a lot about the failure of the AI slapped on top vendors and how the core issue is often these ancient underlying legacy systems. So if software really does need this fundamental rewrite to be truly AI native, what's the next domino to fall? What massive, currently profitable, deeply entrenched enterprise system, something everyone just assumes will be around forever, maybe like core SAP modules or Oracle's oldest financial platform?
Something huge and complex.
Exactly. What's the next one of those giants that's destined to be completely rebuilt from the ground up by an AI-native challenger? Where's the single biggest opportunity hiding right now for a polymath team to disrupt?
Think about that system you use at work, that vendor you absolutely despise because their software is so clunky and outdated.
That's probably a pretty good place to start looking. That frustration is often the signal of opportunity.
That's definitely something to think about. Start pulling on that thread.
We encourage you to do just that.
Great discussion. We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.